I have it in my notes to remind you of the life groups, about the sign-ups. Dave did a great job. I spent the whole sermon last week. In 2 minutes, he just basically did everything I spoke about last Sunday. I couldn't do it better. Really want to encourage you guys to take it to heart and really try to find yourself a life group if you're not a member, if you're not a part of one yet. So we also added a sign-up sheet for Man Church. So if you're once a month, usually the first Saturday of the month, guys get together, we have breakfast, we study the Bible, we pray, we build our relationship, we grow closer. So if you've not been a part, please sign up, put your name and the phone number, and Thomas will include you in the texts that he sends everybody to remind of the Man Church coming up on Saturday. This might be bad. I'm already mixing up the words and stuff, so hold on. Okay, so today we're going to be in part 3 of our I Love My Church sermon series. And, I don't think, as humans, I don't think we do very well with the warnings. Usually, most of the time, we just ignore them. We don't pay attention to the warnings that we receive or see somewhere. Maybe it's a warning sign. And we start real early. Despite all the warnings, every kid in Siberia that grows up in Siberia, at least in my time, has to learn the hard way the fact that licking metal stuff when you're outside in the winter can be pretty painful, a pretty painful experience, especially when you want to disconnect your tongue from this metal post or a swing, that you're on. That you learn it the hard way. And yes, I was one of those kids. It's not that I didn't know. I was told. I was warned. I just had to find it out for myself. Like, what does it feel? It feels bad. Don't try it, okay? If you're ever, I know I'm talking to the Texas people, all right? And it's like 100 degrees and stuff. But if you're ever in a freezing cold climate somewhere in the winter, do not lick the metal things, okay? It'll be a lot of pain. And every kid has to learn from their own experience. Seeing your friend go through this is not enough. It's not going to do it. You have to learn it from your own experience, from your own pain. And I'm sure everybody has their own story or stories of ignoring different warnings and learning things the hard way as you were growing up. And then we're growing up and things are not getting better. Talk about the teenagers, that age when we have to learn things the hard way. Adults, we're not doing any better either. And by the time we've grown up, we have already mastered the art of ignoring the warnings. So it's not surprising that when people get into a relationship with God, we tend to ignore those warnings as well. And this time, it's the warnings from God. So we kind of tend to treat them the same way we've treated all the warnings in our lives until that point. And so today, what I want us to do is look at one of God's warnings that I believe we should not ignore. And hopefully when we read this passage, you will see why. And this passage is in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. if you open it up, we'll have like several, 2 or 3 passages from that chapter today, so you'll be able to follow up. But this is what Apostle Paul says when he speaks to the church in Corinth that was going through. The church in Corinth had a lot of issues. They had a lot of problems. And so the whole letter that Paul is writing to, he's writing and he's addressing all those different issues. And so in chapter 3, verse 16 and 17, this is what he says. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. And you say, whoa, what was that? I thought God was only about love, that God is loving God. He approves of anything that I do. What's up with God saying, if somebody destroys his temple, he will destroy that person? Paul, speaking to the church in Corinth, he says, you, what's the plural of you in Texas? Y'all. Okay, what's the plural of plural? All y'all, right? So he's just talking to them. It's like that Texas Contemporary Version translation of the Bible. So you say, all y'all, I know I'm not saying it right, but he's saying that you, the church, you're all together, you're God's temple. And if anyone destroys this temple, meaning his church, God says, I will destroy that person. That's a pretty strong statement if you ask me. That's a pretty strong warning from God through Paul. Basically, you hear, we'll look at this passage and we see God saying, I love my church, and I will fight for it, and I will protect it. And if you mess with it, you will have to deal with me, says God. So what's the contact? Why is God so wound up, and why is he so why is he making such a strong statement? What's the context? How can you destroy God's temple? Well, the context is divisions in the church. Divisions was one of the issues that the church in Corinth was going through. And so if we go back to the beginning of chapter 3, and we'll read verses 1 through 4, this is what Paul starts this chapter with. He says, brothers and sisters, I could not address you as people who live by the Spirit, but as people who are still worldly, mere infants in Christ. I gave you milk, not solid food, for you were not yet ready for it. Indeed, you are still not ready for it. You are still worldly. For since there's jealousy and quarreling among you, are you not worldly? Are you not acting like mere humans? For when one says, I follow Paul, and another, I follow Apollos, are you not mere human beings? So Paul is saying, remember, he's talking to the church, he's talking to Christians. He said, and he's talking about the time when he visited the church, and he said, I had to address you and I had to talk to you as worldly people. And I still have to do the same thing. I have to continue to address you and talk to you as worldly, mere human beings, i.e., not spiritual. Why? Because he says there's divisions among you. There are some people among you that are saying, I follow this person, and another person says, I follow this person, and there's quarreling and arguments and jealousy among you. There's conflicts. And so he says, when you create and promote divisions in the church, when you're picking sides and you're discrediting people, you're not acting as spiritual people, but as worldly people, people of this world. And then after these verses that we just read, he continues and he says that all those different, you have groups in the church that follow all these different people. So you have fractions of people, divisions, different little groups. We're like this guy, we're like this guy, we're like this guy. And all those groups are divided. And then he said, and all those people that you're trying to follow, they're doing the common thing. They have the common goal. They're building the same building. And they do the common work. And then he arrives to that passage that we started with when he says, if somebody destroys God's temple, the church, then I will destroy that person. God says, I love my church, and I will protect its unity. So what does it mean for us as the disciples and the followers of Jesus? For me, that means that if I love my church, I will protect its unity. I will protect the unity of my church if I say that I love my church. Why would we do that? Well, I guess because 2,000 years went by and things did not really change very much. We still have people, churches still struggle with divisions in the church. And division, when there's division in the church, this is the most fertile soil for Satan to do his work. He is just loving it. We're making it so easy when we do that. He comes in and he does his own thing. And I guess, our human and sinful nature has not really changed very much in the last 2,000 years. And so protecting the church's unity has to be intentional. Because if we don't make effort to do that, if we just leave it to our human nature, then it'll create divisions, not unity. And so today's message, it will require an action plan on each of our part. It requires determination and action. And we'll need to, hopefully you will be taking some notes maybe, and then also apply what we talk about today. So how can I protect the unity of my church? Well, I will protect the unity of my church by resolving the conflicts. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 23 and 24, Jesus says, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, he's talking about somebody who came to worship God, brought a gift, brought an offering. He says, and if you came, brought your gift, ready to worship God and offer this gift to God, saying, God, I worship you, I love you, I thank you. He says, if you remember that somebody, your brother or sister or somebody else has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. There are several different passages in the Bible, in the New Testament specifically, about conflict resolution. And the reason that I chose this one is because it kind of takes away that excuse that we often say when we know that somebody has something against me. We say, well, I'm not going to go to resolve this conflict because they're mad at me, so they will have, it's up to them. They have to come up and talk to me. If they're guilty, it was their fault. They're the ones mad. I'm fine. I don't want to go and talk to them. Well, Jesus kind of takes that excuse away and throws it away. And he says, no, if you know that somebody has an issue with you, it has a problem with you, you go, you leave that offering, don't come and worship me. First go and resolve, reconcile with that person. It's up to you to make the first step, even if it's not you who's mad, even if it's not you who is at fault. Because none of us is ever at fault, right? It's always somebody else's fault. Always somebody else has done something wrong. Jesus says, no, if you know, go and reconcile. Jesus tells us, get your conflicts resolved before you come to worship me. And notice that the goal in this passage, in what Jesus says, the goal is reconciliation. He doesn't say, leave your offering, go prove to that person that they're at fault. It's their fault. They're the ones that are wrong. And then come back and bring your offering to me. He says, no, go and reconcile with the person. So the goal is reconciliation, not proving that somebody is wrong. In other words, Jesus says, our relationships is what's important. Our relationships is what's valuable. Are there any conflicts that you need to go and resolve to protect the unity of the church? So I will protect the unity of my church by resolving the conflicts. Next, second thing, I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to gossip and listening to gossip. Proverbs 26, verse 20, it says, without wood, a fire goes out. Without a gossip, a quarrel dies down. God says that gossip is a fuel for conflict. It's something like if you see a fire and you throw fuel, don't expect it to go down. Expect it to get even bigger. That's the same way that gossip works. If there's a conflict, if there's a situation that needs to get resolved, if there's a tension, if there's misunderstanding, gossip just makes it bigger. It expands it. And so God tells us, get that fuel out of the conflict, out of the situation. And you know what is interesting about the gossip? It takes two sides. It takes two people for the gossip to occur. One side that is gossiping, another side that is listening to the gossip. So if you refuse, if you're the one, you're sitting somewhere and somebody is starting to gossip about somebody else, be that person that stops this fire. Be that person that takes the fuel out of that situation. Just tell them, I don't feel comfortable that we are having this conversation. Ask the person, have you talked to that person? I know it's not comfortable. I know it can be awkward. But the question is, are we going to protect the unity of our church or not? And this, sometimes it takes making steps that are not comfortable. If I refuse to do this gossip dance, then it stops the gossip. Because the gossip is not a dance that you can do the solo, right? It involves two sides. It involves at least two people. And what's bad about gossip? I mean, it feels good, right? Sitting there talking about somebody. Can you believe she did that? Can you believe he said that? Do you know? As if there's not enough news. But what gossip does, it actually, we already mentioned that. It does not solve the problem. Gossip spreads out misinformation, because when information is not verified, that's misinformation, and it spreads out. And then good luck trying to go and put all that stuff out, all those fires out. Gossip damages somebody's reputation. And then it also declares that somebody is guilty without giving that person the opportunity to defend themselves. I mean, you've talked about somebody, you've already proclaimed and declared the person is guilty of something. The person didn't even have a chance to speak for himself, to give his side of the story. So, I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to gossip and refusing to listen to gossip. Third thing, I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to attend every fight or every battle that I'm invited to. I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to attend or engage in every fight, in every battle that I'm invited to. Proverbs 19, verse 11. It says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. The simple truth is, you don't have to get involved in every fight that you're invited into. You can just not respond. You don't have to launch yourself and win every battle. Because sometimes people just provoke you. They will say things trying to get you out of balance. They will say things about you behind your back, and then you just go. I mean, this is going to take your whole life if you engage in every battle that people are trying to get you involved in. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Sometimes God says it is to one's glory to overlook an offense. It's just not worth spending my time. It's not worth the fight. It's not worth going and getting everything even. Sometimes it's better to stay offended. Sometimes those invitations into battles and fights, sometimes they're intentional. Sometimes people are just kind of dragging you into that situation. And sometimes people they didn't think about something. They just said something, it got out, and they didn't analyze, didn't think it through. They didn't know. And sometimes they even say it, and they don't even have a clue that they offended you. So that would be an example of one of those things when you can just let it go. Overlook an offense, because probably, most likely, the person did not mean to do that, to hurt you. Maybe they don't know something about you that would help them understand that this might hurt you. So, and even if they do that intentionally, you just disarm the attacker by refusing to go into that battle. They don't know what to do. I mean, what else do? I tried to get you in a fight, and you just stayed away. You're just like, okay, I'll let it go. You put out the fire. Because when there is no fuel, the tension, the conflict, the situation, the fire dies down. So I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to attend every battle and every fight that I'm invited into. And the next one, the fourth one, the last one is, I will protect the unity of my church by focusing on what unites us instead of focusing on our differences. I will protect the unity of my church by choosing to focus on what unites us, not on our differences. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 8 and 9, Paul continues his thought. Remember he started the chapter talking about divisions and people being worldly and just breaking into groups, saying, one person, I follow Apollos, I follow Paul, some others were saying, I follow Christ. And Paul says this in verse 8 and 9. He says, the one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. When I was studying and reading these passages, I just thought, well, I know God is all-knowing, okay? But for some reason I thought, well, imagine God getting a daily report. Lord, your workers, your children are fighting again. Instead of working together to advance your kingdom, they're at it again, going at each other. hurting each other, insulting each other, gossiping about each other, lying about each other, hating each other. And God died. He sent His Son to die for this church. And according to what Paul says here, we all have the same goal. We all have the same purpose. We all share the final destination. But there are different workers doing the same thing, that one thing, one goal. Different workers with different skills, and maybe sometimes even different preferences, okay? There's no reason to argue who is more important, who is more valuable. We need to understand that we are co-workers, as Paul says it here. We're co-workers. We're not competitors. We're not competing with each other over something. We're co-workers, working on the same goal, trying to achieve the same destination, sharing the same good news with people. So we definitely don't need more tension, more conflict, more stress, more gossip at the church. I mean, there's enough of that junk out there. We don't need that at church. The church needs to be a place that is free of all that stuff. And I know we're humans. I'm not saying we can be perfect in that, but we can fight and protect the unity of our church. Let me respond to the objection that sometimes we may have. Because what happens is we kind of give ourselves a discount. We say, well, we justify doing things that we know, in our mind we know that it's bad. It's dividing the church, we know it. But we just allow ourselves to do that because we feel like we also, on the other hand, do a lot of things that are good, that are building the church up, make it stronger. So we're like, maybe somehow all these things, they cancel each other out. The good and the bad. So we're like, okay, I just give myself a little room to do something that may divide the church, but, I do a lot of good things. The things that build a lot of people up. Well, I think that all those good things that you do will not matter if you divide and split the church. I don't think any of those good things will matter if in the end the church is divided. Because if the church is in shambles because of divisions, all those good deeds, they don't matter anymore. The church is done. It's divided. It's separated. It's split. Who cares how many things, how many kids you taught, how many songs you sang on the stage, how many Bible studies you led, how long you've attended a life group. If the church is divided, all those good things do not matter anymore. And plus, what's even worse, now you're at odds with God, who says, if anyone destroys my church, I will destroy that person. And it's a pretty serious situation to be in, if you ask me. So, if I love my church, then I will protect its unity. I will protect its unity by resolving the conflicts that I have with people. I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to gossip and to listen to gossip. I will protect the unity of my church by refusing to attend every fight that I am invited into. And I'll protect the unity of my church by focusing on what unites us instead of the things that are different, our differences. You know, something that we say at the end of every service, let's go out and make Jesus famous. If we're serious about this, if we're serious about making Jesus famous, then we have to protect the unity of our church, which He died for. Because a divided church is not going to make Jesus famous, let me tell you this. The church that's divided, the church where people just fight and argue and quarrel and always are angry and mad about something, it's not going to make Jesus famous. We can say it 100 times each Sunday, but it's not going to make Jesus famous. On the other hand, if we fight to protect the unity of our church, we may end up with a church that, where conflicts end in reconciliation, where gossip dies the moment that it starts because nobody listens. The church where people focus on what unites them rather than their differences. I mean, wouldn't your friends want to experience a community like that? Wouldn't it be easier for us to invite people into a church like that? And I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not saying we're terrible at it. I'm just saying that the sermon series, we're talking about I love my church. And what does it involve? What does it mean? How do you show your love for your church? And there's always something that we need to strive for. There's always room for us to grow. So I'm not saying we're terrible, but I always know that we always have room to grow. And there's definitely room for us to protect the unity of the church that God made us a part of. If you're new to faith, if you're just learning about God, this could be a tough Sunday to end up in the church like, whoa, I thought church was like super nice, everybody was, well, we're real people, okay? We're forgiven, we're loved. We definitely are not perfect. So we're saved by God's grace. We're forgiven because of what Jesus has done for us. But we're just here to let you know that this is a place where you can belong. I'm sure that this is a place that you're not perfect as well as all of us are. But we do have the common destination. We do have the same God that we worship, the same God that forgives us, the same God that has grace, shows His grace to us. And so we would love to tell you about this God who loves you and who gave His one and only Son, who died for you so that you can spend eternity with Him. If you need prayers, if you want to, at the end of the song, the worship song we're about to sing, we'll have people on each side of the stage. And so if you need prayers, I want to encourage you to come. They'll be happy to pray with you and pray for you. So, but again, if I love my church, I will protect its unity. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for the wonderful and amazing plan that when you established your church, this community of people that are set apart for doing your work, for worshiping you. God, I pray for each and every one of us. I know there are different battles that we fight daily. God, and I pray today that the battles that we would choose the battles wisely. Help us to fight the battles that are godly, that make people stronger, and that unite the church. Father, I pray that you give us the conviction to be the people who will stand up and protect the unity of the church that you purchased with the blood of your Son. You paid a huge price to forgive our sins. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for accepting us as we are, but also I want to thank you that you always expect us to change and grow. And thank you for your patience as we're in the process of doing that. God, I pray for this church. I pray that you give us the heart of worshiping you, the heart of being the people that you're pleased with, that seek you and you only, that people that do not live double lives, but live what their faith says. And God, give us the conviction that we are one family, that we are co-workers and not competitors. Thank you for Jesus. And in his name I pray. Amen.